So finally got the oil pan removed. On the 97 to 2001 Honda Preludes, incorporated a aluminum oil pan, which allowed for an engine stiffener between the transmission and the engine itself. So here's a little peek of the underside of our said engine. Everything looks pretty good, reasonable for almost 100,000 miles. Took a quick look inside the oil pan. I didn't see any metal fragments, so that's a fantastic discovery. You can see we've got our girdle, our crank, everything's looking pretty good. You can see all of the old gaskets. So on the rear cap, rear main seal, on the back side of the motor, I just took that off. I'm going to go ahead and clean all of the gasket off, trying to be very mindful of what is capable of falling into an area where I want a baby. I want to make sure that everything stays nice and pretty and clean. It's got a little oil staining. That's typical. You're gonna see that. But I just wanted to give you a shot here of the inside of this motor, and it looks fairly clean. Now, don't believe anybody's ever done anything to the block itself. As for maybe upgrades, everything looks to be, I don't know if I can get any better shots than this, but everything looks to be fairly clean with the exception of the oil stains and whatnot. Hopefully we don't see no metal fragments. I don't see nothing. Alright, so here's the rear main assembly. This cap, this enclosure. So I wanted to give you a little look at what the inside facing towards the components, such as the crankshaft, connecting rods, etc. I removed this off the vehicle. Looks pretty normal for the amount of miles and having a leaking seal. I believe most of the oil issue I had was on the seal here at the oil pan. You can see quite a bit of fresh oil there, and the system had been drained, so I'm pretty sure that's the majority of the issue for oil finding its way here and potentially being tossed around inside that bell housing. As for the rear main seal, if you look, I don't know if I can get this. Let me try to get this on camera, but let me see if I can get a little extra light here. Right down in there, in this little gully, this channel, you know, oil's going to be here, and there's a spring inside this, just underneath. You can kind of see that spring. There's a spring in there. This helps keep it sealed onto the crankshaft. Well, after time, oil, you know, these wear out, oil finds its way, and I've got some buildup here on this channel, and it's not, well, it looks like, yeah, just about everywhere, with the exception of here, and that may have just fallen off. So I just wanted to give you a little look there, see how it looks and why I suspected it to begin with, and that's what we have. 100,000 miles on these. It's to be expected, especially if you're driving with any kind of intent for abuse. See what your car is made of. So all this is going to get cleaned up. We'll remove the seal itself. I'm going to go through, get the old gasket off. Being mindful this is aluminum, and we want to be cautious not to damage the surface area for the sealant that will be put new. Also be mindful of your other areas where you've got oil buildup. just get that off if you can. You know, use a little parts cleaner, wire brush, something not too abrasive that will damage aluminum. I like to use a brass, or if it's a light, I can take it off like that, which looks like it's come off pretty easily. Parts cleaner, maybe a nylon brush is about the best for what I've got here. So we'll clean this part up. We'll get it as nice as we can. Put the new sill in. We'll set it to the side. Went ahead and on the 10 bolts, the 10 millimeters, went ahead and cleaned these up. And these are a 6 by 1.0 millimeter. And they are an 8.7 foot-pound torque. These are the 10 that attach this to the block itself. I already cleaned those up. Went ahead and removed the old gasket, which they recommend. You can see in the holes there's gasket. So you put a sealant in each thread on these bolts. You put them on the threads and you thread them in, and there'll be a sealant across this whole section here. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll get back to you on the oil pan. Once this is completed, we'll have to do the same thing. It's going to take a lot of cleaning, so like I've said before, nobody wants to watch somebody else cleaning parts. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so it took me about all of 5 minutes to remove the rear main seal and get 90% of it cleaned. As you can tell, it wasn't really anything other than some oil staining and some residual sealant. All I did was use a rag and I just wiped it off. Came off pretty quick. Everything's pretty good and clean. I'm going to give it a little better detailed job than this. If I was just putting the car back together to get it back on the road, I probably wouldn't think otherwise, other than making sure my surface areas are clean. Something you want to be mindful of, is you want to make sure you be nice to these little dowels that line up. You don't want to distort them or ruin them. Now we've got remaining sealant in these holes all across the back surface. We're going to clean all that out. We're going to get all the remaining sealant out, and it'll be good to go. We'll go ahead and clean the front side real good, get all this remaining crud nice and pretty and shiny. Look good on the car, even though you can't see it. So here we have the rear main seal. So what I do when I'm trying to remove it is I'll take this and I'll place it on 2 softer surfaces, so like 2 pieces of wood, which this is raised above so that I could give it a few taps with something blunt, but that's not going to enter here and damage the surface area where this will mate to this. Here's the spring. I don't know if you've ever seen one. Sits inside the groove of the rear main seal, which is a little more pliable and adds tension, kind of grips on to your rotating crankshaft. On the outer edge, it's a little firmer. It makes a good solid contact. So when you are reinstalling, you want to make sure that you clean this up real good. Don't damage it in any way. That way it creates a good solid seal. And then you will push, insert this rear main seal all the way to the edge here, onto that lip. That creates a nice solid seal. And hopefully you don't get any leaks with that, and that'll be great. So I'm going to move on, start cleaning this up even further, and then we'll move over to the oil pan. Okay, so after some good amount of cleaning, you can see that the rear main seal plate, assembly, housing, whatever you want to call it, has been cleaned, and I have reassembled with a new rear main seal. And that is that part number. I like this brand. They have good products. I don't endorse them, but I've been using them for a while and I prefer. So I went ahead and I cleaned the exterior pretty good with this brass brush. I was gentle. I used it in some of the rough spots. Cleaned all the holes with this little brass brush, this little tiny. And then used paper towel and some parts cleaner. Parts cleaner does pretty good. Again, I went around and I cleaned every outer edge. Same thing, same procedure. Knocked it all off, scrubbing it down. Came out really nice. A little hard spots that I couldn't reach, or couldn't seem to get with the brass. Very sparingly, just tried to scrape it away. Being mindful not to damage the surface here. So I tried my best. That'll come out pretty good. When installing the rear main sill, I use a bit of a rubber mallet on it just to tap it into place real slow like. Do the best that I can not to damage it. Even though this is quite a heavy duty one, just nice gentle, easy taps. Get it in there as best you can. I know they sell tools. I know they have other ways, other means. This is just what I do. If it gets damaged in any way, then you're going to have to buy another one. But it's flush against the mating surface. It creates a pretty much permanent sill with the mine set that and about 100,000 miles, depending on the brand and the quality. This puppy's probably going to have to be replaced. It's just the nature of the beast. So there it is, ready to go on. The only thing I got to do now is I got to go over to the block and clean that up real good. Pretty much same procedure, except with the mindset, it's not going to get in that engine. So I'm going to be very, very careful. Most of it's already cleaned off, so there's not a lot to do. Probably only take about 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes max. This took me a lot longer than I wanted to, but I like to have it clean. I don't like to put parts onto a car that could otherwise have had more attention to it. If you take the time and the attention into something simple like this, then who knows how far your builds will go. This isn't something you're going to see, so it doesn't really matter if it's all shiny and bright, but at least it doesn't have oil caked everywhere on it. It'll make for a better sill, and you'll feel better about it. Just a few things. Remember, clean your bolt holes and make sure you don't damage the dowels. Be mindful of all of these surfaces that need sealant. Don't scratch them. That'll cause leaks. And then when installing this rear main sill, it's a tight fit, really good tolerance here. Make sure that you're gentle, but assertive enough to get this inside. If you happen to create scoring inside, if you were removing it, you could cause a leak, so be mindful of that as well. And then when you install it, you got to make sure that you're nice to it. If you need to use a little bit of, I don't really recommend it, but if you're having a struggle, a little hard time, maybe just a tad bit of oil, just to kind of help lubricate the part that you're applying to the crankshaft, which is your rear main sill here. Just a little bit of lubricant, just a touch, if it helps. Shouldn't really need any at all. If you can just get it on there nice and gentle, and hopefully it'll be smooth for you. So there's that, and I'll keep going. All right, so we've got the rear main sill plate completely cleaned with the rear main sill installed. Took a little extra time. I went ahead and spent about, I don't know, I'd say a good hour on it, making sure that the surface area was really good and clean. And then I tucked it away while I cleaned the oil pan, and that was wasn't too bad. The exterior was a lot worse than anything else than the inside was. Inside wasn't really that bad. It was just a simple wipe and some oil staining, as you can tell. So I'm going to go ahead and get these installed. We're going to start with the rear main sill. We're going to be using a silicant. Get that tightened up with the 8.7 foot-pounds on the 10 millimeter bolts, and we'll get a picture of that in. And then once that's installed, we'll go ahead and put we'll get another final wipe down on the interior, make sure there's nothing underneath or inside that can cross-contaminate into the oil. I also was underneath the vehicle for a bit of time, using some precautionary measures to clean the surface area for The oil pan, I was using a razor blade to remove any remaining sealant, and I was being very mindful of any cross contamination, any bits fall onto the underbelly of the beast. So wanted to make sure I did not get anything in there, and I did so with extreme prejudice. I took my time, and it took me a lot longer than I ever really wanted it to. It took me about, I'd say altogether with cleaning this and cleaning the surface area, it took me about 2 hours. I did use a little bit of parts cleaner on the exterior. Did not use anything on the inside, simply other than a shop rag. So I'm going to get a couple more pictures. I'm going to go ahead and put this all on and sealed up, tightened down to the 8.7 foot-pounds.